Okay, so this is the video on how to assemble the tiny tank kit. Now, the first thing, well, actually, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. The very first thing you're going to notice when you open up this bag is the lovely, glorious, funky smell of laser cut acrylic parts. There's very good news though. The vast majority of the funk is contained in this plastic covering. That's where the funk gets trapped, is in this plastic covering. So grab a little piece of masking tape, or go at the little corner with a little X-Acto knife or something and get a corner up there and peel off this plastic gunk on all your parts and throw it away outside, and the funk will go with it. So that smell, the smell will be gone in like an hour. The little tiny bit of funkiness that's left on the parts, come on, get off of there. So go ahead and pull the plastic off all your parts. The plastic might not necessarily be clear, it might be blue or paper, but just get a little edge going and pull it off. And like I said, take this plastic gunk and throw it away outside, and the funk will leave with it. I promise you. Okay, so you can open up your little baggie of parts, and you can go ahead and separate them. Just put like items together, or better yet, little Dixie cups, little dish, something. It's best to put these in a dish. I left them on my desk so you can see them for demonstration purposes. But your sleeves have a habit of grabbing these, and they land on the floor, and then you find them with the vacuum cleaner. So it's better to kind of put these in a little dish or something, so because they're tiny. The only things we're really going to need here to get going is a little screwdriver, and I actually use a flathead on the Phillips head screws because I actually found it fits a little better, but whatever you want to use. And a pair of needle nose pliers or tweezers, and that's kind of, I guess, pretty much all you're going to need. We'll start with our motors. Here are the motors, and you need to solder on whatever leads you're going to use, and I happen to use ones with little terminals on them, and I also soldered a cap on there to keep motor noise down. But whatever is applicable to your application, do it now, but add some wire to it. And just whatever you're going to use. I mean, if you're going to use, this fits a lot of different boards, so let's say you're going to use an Arduino with some kind of motor shield on it, just make note of how the connections are going to work on the motor shield and connect the appropriate doodad wires to it. So to start assembling, we're going to need these guys here, okay, and we will affix them to our motors. Now they're only going to go one way, the hole is only going to line up one way, and you're going to use the longest screws in the pack. They're these 1-inch screws. They should go through that way with the head on the motor shaft side and the nut here. And sometimes it helps if you have little fingers, and I tell you, you might get a wee bit frustrated here during the assembly with these tiny little parts, but it is indeed a tiny tank. So we'll go ahead and do that with this other guy here. I gotta remember to try to keep my hands in frame. If I kind of fall out of frame here, I apologize. It is nearly impossible to videotape these little demo videos and hold the parts and hold them where the camera can see them. Now you can also see I've kind of squared up this edge of the plexi with this edge of the motor, so it's sort of square on there. Alright. And just snug everything. The one main thing to know about this plexiglass is it's very, very strong, and it's also very, very brittle. And it is most brittle right now. Once it's assembled, each part is supported by its adjacent part, and it's incredibly strong there. But during the assembly process, it can be easy to kind of snap little things here and there. So just be real gentle, and I'll make note of where you can make a mistake. The other thing is, of the parts that are symmetrical, like this base plate could go, it's symmetrical either way, or these little rear supports, these are symmetrical either way. If you look at them really, really close, because of the nature of the laser cutter, the holes are going to be slightly tapered. And so there's a little side and a big side, and if you look really close, you can kind of see which one's which. But it is best for the parts to go into the big side. If you go the small side, like, hear that little click, and it kind of sticks, like, yeah, and then the big side, whoop, it goes right in. So you can make your life a lot easier if you kind of see which side's which. So we got our motors and the little doodads on there, and now we need this little guy with a hole in it, and it just slips in like that, right there. Get in there. Okay, so there is our motor assembly, and then the leads hanging off. Okay. Now this whole thing as a unit is going to go into the base here. So make a little room, and don't force anything. Just wiggle it just a little bit, and you just wiggle it in there. Okay. Now, right in there where the little doodad on the motor, that's going to be a funky spot. You got to wiggle that sometimes and encourage it to go where you want it to go. Okay, like that. Just encourage it. And also, it's best to squeeze the parts together. That way they're supported on both sides, so you're not pushing against the deck. Alright, so our motors are flush with the bottom deck, and all of our doodads are in. Now, the next thing we got to do is we got to start bolting these together, and we're going to use these little T-shaped holes. Let me get a little sip of coffee here. Let me turn off my obnoxious screensaver. It is really best to have a cup of coffee when you're doing this, or a cup of tea or something, so you have something to do, so you don't go crazy. Now, grab the nut like that, okay? And you just fish-a-lish it in there like that, okay? Can you see it in there? And then the bolt goes up through like that, okay? And you just snug-a-lug it. Just snug. Just snug. You don't have to go crazy. Okay? Now, you just continue that process with the rest of the bolts. Okay? Like that. Okay? So go ahead and do these two and these two here. So, boom, 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 boom. So I've gotten those 4 bolts in, and the whole motor assembly is put together. We're going to move on to the rear assembly, which is these 2 guys and that guy. And it's basically almost the exact same procedure. Actually, the first thing you're going to want to do is get these leads sort of up and out of your way there. Okay? And then, same procedure. These 2 go together like this. Okay, just like you did with the motors, but no motors. And the same procedure. The whole assembly is going to go in as one unit. And don't force anything. You just got to kind of line up the tabs and sockets and get it down in there. Okay, same same procedure. Put a nut and a screw there and there, and that's it. Alright, so the next thing on our list is we need to prep this top plate. Alright, and install it. So we are going to put the servo in, and that is done with the the round head, 1/4 inch little bitty guys, just like the screws you've been putting the plexi together with, but shorter. And it will give you a bit more room for your sonar to swing if the shaft of the servo goes forward. The other thing are these 4 brass standoffs. These are the 15mm, should be the longer ones in the kit. And also, I should mention, on my desk here at the beginning of this video, I had 4 extra spacers, and those were unrelated parts that were just banging around on my dirty desk. But at any rate, there's the little nuts on the back. Okay, and the main thing to note here is this hole. Okay, like look, you can look at it this way. That hole is on that side, and that's important because that's where their battery wires are going to come through. So just be sure to get it that way. Should be all set. Now, we can take this assembly, set it there, and this guy, set it there. And the first thing I would do is I would take your servo wire and see if you can fish it through here. Okay, grab your little tweezers, your needle nose, or whatever you got to do, and just pull it through there. Now, that in turn can come up through this center hole here, as well as the 2 leads coming from your motors can come through this center hole, like that. And just kind of pull them through as you go down. Now at this point, you've got to get all of these little tabs and sockets all together at once, and this is going to be a pain in the derriere, but patience is your friend. Okay, you just wiggle it a little bit, and you just kind of let everything find its home, and it will eventually. Okay, kind of push these guys in. You see I'm kind of, and also notice I'm not pushing down because you'd be pushing against these screw heads. Instead I'm squeezing this way. You can squeeze actually incredibly hard once everything's sort of seated. So also these little cutouts here where these motors are, those are always little boogers, and just fudge it, whatever you got to do, but get all the little tabs and sockets sitting down flat. At this point, it should feel pretty darn sturdy, because it is. Now, this next part, again, little tricky dicky. Needle nose pliers and a nut. And then you grab one of your bolts, and you got to fish. Can you see that? Let's see. With the camera. Okay. You got to fish this in here. Alright. Get in there, you little booger. Get in there. I'm losing my nuts. Get in there. And then the bolt goes through. Okay. Got it. That's it. So you're gonna do all of these. You're gonna have one that goes in right there, and you're gonna have 2 back there, there and there, and then the 2 up front there and there. So total you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to put in. And so go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in a second. Alright, we are looking good. This is what you should have so far. You can see these are nice and sturdy now that they're kind of captured in there, and all your bolts are in. The next thing we is going to do is these little switches in the battery pack. There's a provision for 2 switches on this little plate, And the reason is, on my robots, I like to have two switches, one for the robot brain and one for the motors. That way I can do testing without the robot, driving off the desk. But you may choose to use one, or maybe none if there's a switch, say, on your motor driver board. So figure out what you want to do there. Also, or I should say thus, also figure out what you want to do with your battery pack. Like, for instance, I know I'm going to be using two switches, and I know I'm going to have two sets of power, one for motors and one going to the brains. And so I've soldered in two leads, and I happen to have little connectors on mine. Yours will maybe be different. Here I've connected the grounds together with some shrink tube, and then this is the positive that's eventually going to be going to a switch and then jump to the other switch. So I've kind of prepped all these little leads. Here are the two positives that will go to the switches. So I've kind of prepped all of that, and we're going to fish these wires through here. And this is a little tight, but everything will get through there, no problem. Just gotta fudge-a-ludge it. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. So there's your battery pack through, and there's your wires. Now we're going to use these flat head screws. Now they're the only ones that actually have a flat head on them, and we are going to drop them through. If you'll notice, the flat head, well, here, I'll show you in a second. Okay. The flat head conveniently fits in a countersunk hole on the battery holder. Get on there, you little goober. Get there. There we go. Okay. We'll do one more here. Drop that through there. A little nut on the back. And snug it down. Okay. So there is your battery pack, and you can see the screws are nice and flush with the back of the battery pack, so the batteries will go in just right. And at this point, what you can go ahead and do is solder in your switches. The switches are going to sit like that, and so you can clip your wires accordingly to the right lengths, and then the one or two wires that are going to be going eventually to your motor driver board, whatever you got to do with those, let those go out. Okay, so I'm going to solder that in. Back in a flash. Okay, alright, so I've made all my solder connections. Got my grounds tied together. Like I said, these are the two wires for data and motors that are going to go up to the motor driver board or the brain board. And this is just sitting here. It's not held in yet. And so that's that. The next thing is to go ahead and prep this little backpack, and the best thing to do here, these four little guys should match pretty much any kind of board you can put on here. Now here's a well, this is the Duemilanove, but it could be an Uno or the pickaxe, or it holds a whole lot of boards. But whatever board you're using, what I would suggest doing is put it on here and figure out what holes it lines up with, because there's a lot of different holes in here for a lot of different boards. So for instance, if you're using the Duemilanove, you're only going to get 2 holes. If you're using the Uno, they have actually widened that hole, and there's another one over here, so there'd be 4. The pickaxe is 2. Just whatever holes line up, use those holes. And you take these little spacers and you put them in just like you did before when you put the spacers on the main deck. Okay, so just snug them in. And these you might actually want to snug a little bit with a nut driver or a pair of pliers or something, because we're going to be screwing a screw against these, and they might tend to turn a little bit. Okay. So there's that, and let's see, it'll go, our board will eventually mount, oops, like that. There. Okay? So there's the standoff. But again, your standoffs are going to go wherever your board dictates. Alright. Now, once again, you also need to think about how your motor driver is going to work. Like, for instance, if all of your connections are on one end, you might want to just run your wires just like that. Okay? Now, in my case, I've got connections on multiple sides of my motor driver, so I'm actually going to run all of these wires through the center hole here, like this. And then what I can do is they can kind of come out sort of from under the board, like this. And then your board will be, come on, get on there. Let me just set that, okay. Then your board will be on top, and then your connections can go, you know, can kind of wrap around, and they'll be sort of neat and tidy. You can take the slack and sort of tuck it under there, and but just take a you know, a gander at your motor driver or whatever board you're using, and kind of figure out, you know, pre-plan sort of where your wires are going to go. So get your wires where you're going. Grab these little, it's the only metric bolt screw in the pack, and it has little washers on them. And just screw this baby down. No biggie. Looking good. Got our little backpack on there. Our wires are pulled through. Battery pack's on there. We soldered our switches in. When we put this backpack on that holds the main, you know, brain board, these, you can see these 3 sockets here. That's the other half of what's holding your switches in. So now the switches are in, and they're nice and sturdy. Okay. And next thing would be wheels. Now, they have little teeth on them. The teeth go to the outside. And you'll also notice that these have a flat. Those are the fronts, and those are the backs. So we can put the fronts on, and you just press them on like this. Alright. Not quite as far as they'll go, but pretty close. You can always move them around a little bit after the fact. Oops, if I would put it on the right way. Just line up that flat part, get her on there. Ta-da-da. Now for the rears, these little bolts, these snifty bolts, came with the track kit from Pololololololoo. And here's how it's going to work. There's your wheel, there's your bolt. Bolt, then the little washer, okay, and then a small circle, and then the slightly larger circle. Okay, and then you can see I got my finger holding the bolt through, and then finally it can go through here, and the hole should be a little snug. I tried to make it as tight as I could so it'd keep the slop out of it. And then you can put the nut on. Let's see, can you see that? Yes. Like that. And I'll repeat the process with the other side. And last but not least, tracks. Now, I personally have actually done what I'm doing right now, which is kind of stretching them on after the fact. But and I have yet to kind of see them get stretched out doing this, but I could be wrong. If you want to actually get them around the rear tire and then put the rear wheel in with the track around it, I don't see any problem with that. Will you get on there, you little booger? There. That's it. There you go. Look at that cute little thing. Now, it comes with a sonar bracket. Here's the sonar bracket. There's a video, if you go to rocketbrandstudios.com, there's a video about how to assemble this, but for crying out loud, if you can put this together, you can figure out this guy. Put the screws through, put the nuts through, and then screw this to the servo horn and stick it on. It's not rocket science. You should be able to figure this guy out. And this will match a Sharp, a Ping, or an SRF04, anything you want. And it'll fit a Ping with the pins going out the back or up. So put that guy together and you can stick it on there. And then go ahead and affix your brain board of choice. In this case, here's an Arduino, but like I said, if you're using a pickaxe or anything, you can use just about any board here. The Gadget Gangster propeller board fits this and is awesome. The 444 AVXB robot module is an awesome module to use here. But whatever brain you're going to put on there, you can stick it on there and then stick your motor shield on, hook up your wires, and you're done. There's your robot. So, congratulations if you got it together. Congratulations if you got it together. Any questions or problems, just go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'm happy to talk you through it, walk you through it. But there you go. That is how to put the little tiny tank together. And hope you had fun. It's a great little tank. It's great fun.